today I'm here finally to start work on creating some type of trellis structure for these new kiwi fruit. As you can see, they're doing really well. I do have a video, I'll put a link to that if you want to have a look where I originally planted these. But like all kiwi fruit, they really need a structure to grow on, otherwise they will be absolutely crazy. Like I've had experience with in the past with the kiwi fruit I actually have growing already, where they become uncontrollable. Now I have done some work on those and there's more to do, but that's for another video. In this section, if you recall, I also planted hazelnut trees and they're looking really nice. Now it's springtime, come out in their leaves and quite happy. I have put some mulch around those to keep the moisture in and a bit of grass seed as well. Hopefully that will become an area that I can maintain fairly easily. So in terms of what type of structure for kiwi fruit is a bit of a question. Commercially, there are a number of different structures used. But for home use, my experience is kiwi fruit like to grow quite huge, and that's an issue. So I prefer to keep things really to my own height, that I'm not going to be cutting when it comes to pruning time much higher than I can reach, not having to get on ladders or anything like that. I was quite impressed by the appearance of the kiwi fruit growing in the Hobart Botanic Gardens, which simply use a basic fence type structure to grow on. Something that a home gardener can very easily find already or create themselves. So I'm going to do something like that along here, but I'm using some materials that I have that come from my father-in-law from an old tomato growing greenhouse, and so it includes part of these frames behind me here. Now I originally thought to use the entire frames, but I've decided not to do that, but to actually only use part of that. And also some of his uprights, I'm going to actually invert those and use those as the posts. So I've got a little bit of work here in terms of using the angle grinder to do some cutting, to dig some holes and concreting the posts in, and then you'll start to see a little bit of what it looks like. It certainly won't all happen in one day, so this film will be over a period of time. Well, it's now a week later and I've given it some time for the concrete to cure that I have put these in. Now these, as I said, were originally uprights for greenhouses. They were the opposite way around to the way that I'm using them. So this piece at the top here was actually in the soil. Putting it this way means that I have the strength coming out of the ground, a nice bracing there. Now, my idea is to use these long pieces that I've cut off the trusses to run a top rail along. That will be the first step that I'm working on today, and then I'll come and put 2 wires using stainless cable, running that through the entire length. But the first step is to get these solid runs along the top. Well, this is the completed trellis. It's not a thing of beauty. Because I've used mostly recycled material, it's rather odd in the way it looks. And it's not exactly the way you would design it if you were building it with new materials. But it's good and firm, and it will stand the test of time, I believe. What remains now is for me to actually train these vines to actually grow along these wires and get them underway. You might ask why I'm building with steel and why I'm not actually just using some trees out of the bush, of which there are plenty. The reason is that the first time I grew kiwi fruit here, I did exactly that. I just built a trellis using trees from the forest, and It didn't take many years for those stumps to rot off and the whole thing to fall down. Kiwis are fairly heavy once they're grown, and particularly in summer when they've got a lot of leaf and vine on. So you need something that has a fair bit of strength to it. The vines look still fairly rough because I'm forcing them into a new growing position, but they'll soon get used to that, and after a couple of years of pruning and training to this, I'm sure they'll fit into it quite nicely. I probably won't bring them up and run them on the top here. At least that's my plan at this stage, because I'd rather keep the growth to this sort of height so that if I actually wanted to cover it, I could do so. Though I haven't had big problems with birds troubling the kiwis, it's more rats that have been the problem, and they are much harder to keep out. The only one that's not doing so well is the male, and of course that is really important because without that I'm not going to get any fruit. So I really have to, now as the weather is beginning to dry out, start to do some watering and keep an eye on them so that they have good growth still through this spring and through the summer, and don't dry out too much, because we're really getting some summery dry weather at the moment, and I don't know when we will actually get some rain. So that's all for today, and I have more of this type of structures to build for the pears that I have planted over winter. There's a couple of those that I want to espalier, so I'll build a similar type of structure for them and probably make a video of that, and I'll be back with other videos soon.